Okay, now precedent diagramming method. Okay, precedent diagramming method or PDM, which is widely used now, even in software, Microsoft, and then Primavera. If you basically use this precedent diagram method alone, is sufficient enough to cover everything. Okay, now let's take a look at precedent diagramming method. Example activity, your activity A, B, E, duration is given, successor instead of using predecessor, doesn't matter, vice versa. And you notice that relationship shown, there is one SS instead of finish to start. And then they also give us lag in two situations. Okay, from that, we are going to see how those things will influence the drawing. Okay, we start with the A. A, you draw one box. You draw one box, and then go down the list B. So okay, it use basically successor. So successor after A is B and D. Then we can draw. After A is you draw B, and then you draw D. Then look at the relationship. Oh, A and B relationship finish to start. Okay, so you just simply connect. Remember, the left side indicates start, the right side of the box indicates finish. Again, the left side indicates start, finish. And you notice this is finish to start. This is the right arrow connection. But then for A and D, start to start relationship. Remember, start to start. So you must connect the arrow from left, start to start relationship, and go into D. If you got the arrow relationship wrong, then the calculation will be wrong. Then what else? Information. Oh, we do have lag. Lag as 1 day. It's been written there, or you just simply put +1. In some of the books, other books, sometimes they put it +1. There could be many variation of indication or note there. And then what else? B. B is basically successor of C. Okay, you already have B, and then what is C? Okay, C is somewhere here. You just simply connect, and then also the lag is +1. And then how about C? C doesn't have any successor, meaning to say C is the ending node. Yeah. D, successor is E, finish to start. So D, successor is E, finish to start. Okay. And then E is basically connected to C. E is connected to C. So that is the relationship and then information that you need to construct first. Now we are going to go into what we call calculation. And you can see how type of relationship and etc. will affect the what we call calculation. It's not that difficult, very simple. Okay, again, we start with 0. Within the box, 0 plus 2 equivalent to 2. Okay. Then 2 will be transferred here because it is finished to start. 2 plus 2 equivalent to 4. Okay. Then for D, because the relationship is not finished to start, you cannot transfer this value. No, it is not right. You have to look at the start to start. The value that you are going to transfer is this value, but then there is a +1. So for forward pass, remember we do plus, 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 plus. It is as if 0 plus 1. Okay, so 0 plus 1 equivalent to 1. 1 plus 1 equivalent to 2. Okay, then 2 you transfer here. 2 plus 1 equivalent to 3. So the 3 value there. But then, okay, between B and C, you cannot transfer directly because there is a +1 here. So 4 plus 1 equivalent to 5. If, for instance, instead of giving a positive lag, so the node give negative lag. So you need to minus 4 minus 1. It becomes 3. You see, everything will be affected. But now, since it is positive 1, 4 plus 1 equivalent to 5. So this is how 5 get into this place. 5 plus 1 equivalent to 6. So the project will be finished in 6 days. Then we copy back 6. 6 minus 1 here equivalent to 5. And then, okay, we need to transfer back. Okay, we need to transfer back. So 5 will be transferred into this box. 5. And then we can subtract within the box. 5 minus 1 equivalent to 4. Okay, fine. But how about here? Okay, 5 will be transferred here, but then because it is backward pass, we need to deduct. So remember, the forward pass is everything add plus. But then when you do backward pass, you need to deduct, including the deduction with this one. So 5 minus plus 1. Remember, this one is basically positive. If, for instance, the value is negative, then 5 minus 1, that will be additional. We are going to encounter that kind of situation later on. 5 minus 1 equivalent to 4. This is how 4 is there. 4 minus 2 equivalent to 2. And then this one is 4. 4 minus 1 equivalent to 3. Okay, the last portion here. How this thing will be affected. Okay, now there are two arrows coming into the last activity here. If you notice closely, one is from here, another one is from here. How do we evaluate? Okay, there is two possibility. First is like this: 2, we transfer here. 2 minus 2 equivalent to 0. Okay, fine, as one alternative. But if it is coming from D, so meaning to say we must transfer here into here. But we must deduct with 1. 3 minus 1 equivalent to 2. So this value is basically, if for instance we put it 2, 2 plus 2, we want to get this value is basically from the additional of this the duration anyway. 2 plus 2 equivalent to 4. So actually between 4 and 2 and 4, which one is the lesser value? For sure it is 2. That's how we evaluate. Later on, you are going to see in some of our example. Okay, this is the last example, which basically, I would say the mother of all example that comprise of everything here. We do have start to start plus 3. Okay, and then what else? We do have finish to start minus 1, meaning to say lead. Finish to finish also. Okay, and then what else? Finish to finish. All right, and then how are we going to basically solve this thing? The activity are given, duration are given, predecessor is given. First thing first, we must develop the network diagram. Okay, now start with a few activity first. Start. So start is here as one box. Just simply draw one box and put the duration there, 0. And then go through the list and look at the predecessor before start. It looks like A, B, and D is the predecessor is basically start. Okay, so we draw A, we draw B. The issue is that sometimes some of you might draw B here. You put B here, for instance, and D here. So it doesn't matter. It is not wrong, except that later on your drawing might have some kind of tangling around, crisscross. So crisscross is not, you don't have to bother. Just on paper only. it is okay for the arrow in this network diagram to crisscross. Okay, so there is nothing wrong because the position of the box that some people might put in different direction. It is okay. Okay, now let's say because we already made this thing before and then we come up with a very nice arranged drawing anyway. In your situation, it might be different. That's okay. So D, B, and A are connected from start. Okay, then how about C? Okay, C is connected from A. Okay, C connected from A, but start to start. So remember, the right arrow must be coming from the left side is start, and then for C going into C as a start. Okay, and then we put +3 to indicate that there is a lag of 3 days. Okay, next we go for E. So E is the predecessor of B. So we draw one box of E and then simply connect from B. How about F? F, we put one box there and then connect from A, but then there is one negative lag there. How about G? G do have two activity A and D. So D is already here and then A is already there. So you just need to connect, and H, you connect from C. Okay, almost there. And lastly, a few activity I. Okay, I, this I is quite unique. In such a way, it does connect from F as a finish to start, but then it connect from H as finish to finish with lead 2 days. And then J also very unique. J basically connect from E and then also connect from G with the finish to finish relationship +3. And then K is coming from E, and then the finish activity, the milestone activity, we basically connect the last 3 there into the finish, but whichever activity run the last, that would be equivalent to the finish time as well, or finish duration. Okay, now we already have those things. We go for forward pass calculation. Okay, forward pass calculation. Remember, we want to fill in the early start, and then early finish date. The top of the box value. Okay, so we start with 0. 0 plus 0, of course, equivalent to 0. Okay, so activity A, D, and B basically start at the same time. 0, 0, 0. Okay, there's a formality there. Okay, now within the box of A, 0 plus 7 equivalent to 7. Very easy. For D, 0 plus 10 equivalent to 10. And then for B, 0 plus 5 equivalent to 5. Okay, now we go for C. C, if it is finished to start, we would transfer this value into here. But then, no, we should transfer the value of, not that one, this value into here. If it is connected that way, but in this situation, it is connected from front. So the value of 0 here will be transferred here, but we need to add with 3. Remember, forward pass is everything is added. So 0 plus 3 equivalent to 0, equivalent to 3, then 3 is there. Okay, so meaning to say activity C start at the same time as A, but it is being delayed a little bit by 3 days. So logically, 3 days will be the starting time or date for C. And then within the box C, 3 plus 11 equivalent to 14. Okay, then 14 transfer here because it is finished to start. 14 plus 8 equivalent to 22. All right, so H we already completed. Now we go for F. Okay, F, this value, by right we transferred it here, but because of the negative lead here, we need to take into account this value 7 plus is basically the forward pass is also plus, always plus, but then this value is negative. So it's as if we are deducting 7 minus 1. That's why it becomes 6. So 6 plus 5 equivalent to 11. Okay, that will be fine. So we go for G first. Okay, G. G, there are 2 arrows coming. So one arrow is coming from D. Then we transfer here as one value. But we have to be very careful. How about the value from A? Value from A is basically 7. 7 is here. So between 7 and 10, which one is the bigger value? For sure, bigger value is coming from this one. This is the dominant, what we call relationship that influence this value. So within the box, 10 plus 8 equivalent to 18. And then we go for E. E is very straightforward. 5 transfer there, 5 plus 9 equivalent to 14. Okay, now we can go for K. K is straightforward. Here, 14, 14 plus 3 equivalent to 17. The only problem is basically with I and J. Okay, now let's focus on I. I here. There are 2 relationships coming in, into I, basically from F and then from H. We must evaluate both relationships and see which date will influence the I. Okay, from where is it? Okay, let's say from F. So because it is finished to start, you will transfer this date into here. Okay, into this slot. 11. Let's say you put 11. 11 plus 4 equivalent to 15 as one alternative. Don't put the number yet, just that would be the assessment. Because we wanted to know which one is the bigger value. That value will be permanently inside this box. Then how about if the value is coming from H? Okay, in normal situation, finish to start. So you will take this value and put it here. But now the issue is that I from H, it is not finished to start. It is finished to finish. It is a little bit weird. So when it is finished to finish, we must look at the relationship where it come from, the arrow there. So it come from the back. Okay, it comes from the back of the box there. So this value will have to be transferred into this slot instead of this value going into this. If this is the situation where Fs relationship, but now we are not using Fs, we are using Ff. Okay, that is the scenario. You have to be very careful with the relationship. Okay, how do we get 20? 20 is basically this value 22. Remember the what we call forward pass is basically plus, but then there is negative here, plus minus 2, because the lag value is negative, not positive. So 22 minus 2 equivalent to 20. So this is the 20 that basically will be inside the box, but then we must double check. Okay, double check. If this is 20, what would be the starting for this activity? So we work backward. 20 minus 4. 20 minus 4 would be 16. Remember, the one that we evaluate initially from F is here, 11. 11 is here. 11 plus 4 equivalent to 15. So you see, between this number, which one is bigger that we input here? For sure, we choose the bigger value. So in scheduling, when we do have multiple relationship like this, from this relationship, we know which relationship is much more dominant. Dominant means to say this activity I is basically determined by activity H. This is the dominant relationship. You can see later on, any activity could have multiple, more than 2, 3, 4 relationship coming from everywhere. But at the end of the day, there is only one relationship that will be dominant, and that activity will basically use the date from that particular relationship. In order to do that, you need to do the calculation. Okay, that will be for I. Similar situation for J. You notice that J do have almost similar kind of relationship from E and then from G. Okay, now let's evaluate one by one. Straightforward is from E. Okay, so E is 14. 14 should be going into this box, but then because of plus 2, so you need to plus 14 plus 2, equivalent to 16. So 16 is one of the value. Don't put into the box yet, just for the sake of you put a note, slightly a note, apa tu, katakan outside of the box. Okay, let's say if it is 16, then plus 12, that will be equivalent to 28, okay, as one alternative. And then, what if we are considering relationship from G? Let's see how G will influence the value that go into J. Okay, so the value that we need to consider is only this value, because this is the figure is coming from the back of the activity there. 18 plus 3, which is basically 21. So the value 21 will go into this 21. If it is 21, then what would happen to the starting of J? We can subtract with 12. Okay, that will be 9, isn't it? Okay, 9. Correct. Okay, 9 day. But 9 is much lower than 16, because forward pass we take the bigger value. So actually, J is much influenced by E compared to G, whereas the I was influenced by J compared to F. Okay, that is the concept of how certain type of relationship, lag and lead, will influence the calculation. Okay, so
sorry, sir, where did you get the 9?
9, basically you subtract. Let's say you get 21 here, if 21 is basically the early finish. So in order to get the early start, you just subtract with 12, isn't it? This is the duration.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you have the indicator. But then we are not going to consider the 9 because it is much lower in value. Okay. So after that, we already completed the forward pass. Okay, forward pass. So the next would be the backward pass. Okay. The backward pass calculation also similar to the forward pass in a PDM diagram, in terms of you must consider the lag and the lead and the type of relationship as well. It is not going to be as simple as a AON diagram before, where it is very straightforward, because remember, AON diagram basically was based on finish to start relationship only, one type relationship. If you get that kind of question, it's very easy, peanut, because it is straightforward calculation. Now, backward pass. Okay, where is the previous one? Okay, 20. Okay, so we already finished J. Okay, J 28 days. This is the value that we are going to use. And then lastly, what goes into the finish line, finish activity there, for sure, the biggest value will go into this, because the rest are basically coming from here is 20, this one is 17. So we choose 28. So 28 is the one, 28 plus 0 equivalent to 28. So in order to complete the the value, we can do that. Okay, this is the finishing duration of the project. At 28, basically it is taken from activity J. Activity J is the last activity going to complete, and that would be our project completion date. Okay, now next we are going to go into a backward pass. Okay, backward pass again. This is the last value that we get. So we copy into here. So again, within the box, 28 minus 0 equivalent to 28. Okay, and then 28 will be going back according to the line into here, and then one more thing is into here. Okay, as a starting before we deduct everything inside the box. Okay, let's say for I, how do we get this value? Well, you deduct with the duration 28 minus 4 equivalent to 24. Okay, now you already get the complete early start, early finish, late start, late finish for each activity. Okay, but before we go into the rest of the things, I want to go into this issue first. I want to zoom into this, these two, what we call activity. Okay, let's say for backward pass, the concept is always the same in terms of you get this value and then you transfer here and then you deduct within the box and you will get this value. Similarly, 28 minus 3, you get 28.5. And for I, 28 minus 4, you get 24. But then, there is an issue. Okay, let's say our focus is basically I. So I is the focus here. So I put the pen. Okay, now. Okay, this is I. Between I and F, it is easy because 24 here, you will transfer 24, and then you deduct with 5 here, and then you get 19. Okay, so F is okay. Peanut, it does not require any kind of special thinking. But the issue with DH, the issue is this value. How do we get that value? Well, if we follow the procedure, we are going to doing the backward pass, tracing back according to the arrow, because the arrow is coming from the back. So this value will be going back here, and then we need to deduct, because remember everything backward pass is 28 minus, and because it is also the negative leg minus 28 minus equivalent to plus, we get 30. So equation wise, that is the value that we get equation wise. So this is how 30 basically landed there, because the type relationship is only one, and if we do the calculation, that is what we get. Okay, now the issue is that if you do that, you are not going to make accurate what we call answer. Why? Because 30. How come suddenly we get 30? Remember, our project finish date is on 28 days. You cannot go beyond this thing from the calculation wise. But the issue is that if we do the calculation from this concept, yeah, it seems to be correct. But remember, when we do backward pass, we must evaluate which one is the least value. And perhaps we forget another least value that we must consider is this value, 28, because the project cannot go beyond 28. So between 30 and 28, so the least value is 28. So in this situation, 30 is not an accurate value to be put here, because we forget to take into account the least value from the overall project completion is 28 days. So you cannot basically extend anything beyond 28. That is the issue if you are too fast in putting the value. We are correct in terms of doing the calculation according to the step, but then the consideration. Then how about J and G? Okay, now let's take a look at J and G. It looks like almost the same issue, but how come G is okay? Okay, now let's zoom in into J. So J.
So in this so question, in this case, if we follow formula, we get 30.
Yes.
But because we cannot go beyond 28, so we should default as 28 as well.
Yes.
Ignore. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is the point I'm getting. Okay, and you know what?
Wait, just
What was that?
In the let's say this question comes out in the exact example. So we still calculate as 30, but we need to show that we cannot put as 30. We need to put as 28 for certain reason. Is it?
You have to put 28. You have to put 28. 28 is the correct answer. I'm just giving you, if we forget to consider that kind of thing, then our answer would be wrong, completely wrong. And if you go to the next slide, this is the right slide. This is the right answer. See, I indicate new, and then I did a double check with the Microsoft project, and Primavera also give the same answer. So meaning to say 28 is the correct answer because of this scenario. Okay. All right. So for G, it's almost similar situation, but G is not being affected because it is 25 here based on the calculation. Is within the project time frame. It is okay. Only the issue with the H, because H, because it is related to I is basically almost at the end of the activity there. Okay, now don't use this slide number 12 as the answer because it is wrong. I just want to mention that this is the issue. So the right slide would be this one. Okay, now based on this one, now let's go into the calculation again. So remember the last one is 28. So we copy back 28. 28 minus 0 equivalent to 28. 28 transfer here. 28 transfer here, and then here. And then within the box, we can minus with 4, we get 24. We get 16, we get 25. Okay, that will be easy. But the issue is this one. Okay, remember, our consideration is basically 28 or 28 minus 2, which is equivalent to 30. So among these things, for sure, 28 is the lowest. So this figure basically stuck there. And then within the box, 28 minus 8 equivalent to 20. Then this one, you transfer here, 20 minus 11 equivalent to 9. Okay. So everything else, it will be straightforward. 24 transfer here, 24 minus 4 equivalent to 19. And then how about J? This is very interesting. J and G. Okay, now. So J and G, remember this is the one that coming from the arrow, the back arrow there. So we shall use the 28. 28 going back here, but then you have to subtract with what we call you have to subtract with the basically 3. 28 minus 3 equivalent to 25. 25 is here. So this figure is basically coming from 28 minus 3 equivalent to 25. And 25 is okay, fine. It is still within the project time frame, so we don't have to change anything. Okay. So even though G, J, and then HI look very similar, but this scenario is a little bit different. Special, very special one. Okay, now for E. Okay, now we go into E. Okay, remember E, there are 2 incoming arrow. So by calculation, so this value could be coming from this one, but 25 is a very big number. So where does this 14 coming from? Actually, it is coming from the smallest value. 16, you need to minus with 2 because it is backward pass. 16 minus plus 2, which is basically 16 minus 2, equivalent to 14. 14 minus 9, equivalent to 4. 4 transfer here, equivalent to 5. 5. 5 minus 5, equivalent to 0. Okay, so we complete B, E, K, whatever. Now, how about G? G, very simple. 25 minus 8, equivalent to 17. Then transfer here, 17 minus 10, equivalent to 7. And then, okay, what else? Lastly, A. The last activity A. Okay, if you look at A, how many incoming activity going back into A? How many? Anyone?
3.
How many activity coming back into A?
3.
3, isn't it? Okay. One is from F, one is from G, another one is from C. From C is basically from in front, but we need to also consider, okay, now the issue is that how we get this value. So our concern is this value. We want to fill up the value. Okay, now we can go one by one. First thing first, let's say we take value, the arrow from F. If we take arrow from F, so 19 is the figure that we are going to look into that thing. And then 19 minus 1, which is equivalent to 20. 20 as one value to be put here. But hold on that value first. Then, how about G? G, this is the value that we are going to consider, 17. Here, 17. 17 transfer here as one value, 17. So now we already have two values between 20 and 17. For sure, 17 is much smaller. But there is another value coming from C. But that value is not coming from the back, but it is coming from the front. That is the tricky things. So when the arrow is coming from front, we must basically consider the front value. So the front value of C that we must consider is 9, because that is the front, not this value, the front value, because it is based on relationship. The 9 is the one that we need to consider. So 9 is coming back into this box, but 9 need to be subtracted with 3. 9 minus plus 3, as if 9 minus 3 equivalent to 6. So 6 would be one of the possible number. Let's say if we put it 6, then what would be our this value? This value we need to add, isn't it? Add with 7 duration. 6 plus 7 equivalent to 13. So now you see the choice that we have is basically either 13, 17. See, this is the value that we calculate before. So which one is the lower value? For sure, it is 13. So 13, how do we get 13? It's basically coming from this, from C actually. So meaning to say C is the dominant relationship, and it will be putting there as those value. Okay. But then at the end of the day, we do have 6 here, 7 here, and 0 here, and the value that goes into the starting point should be the smallest value, 0, and we end up with 0 value. We start with 0 value, and then we end up with 0. Okay, so that is the calculation. After you get that calculation, then you can do total float calculation. But once you get all the value, you can easily identify total float based on the value here. Okay, let me show you. Okay, simply you take the difference between this value or this value. And the one I showed in blue color here, this one is basically the total float. If the value are the same, see, the same, total float is 0, 0 here, 0 here, and the one that I colored in red, the line there, this indicate the critical activity. So the answer for critical activity is basically activity B, E, J, actually B, E, J. But sometimes we can put the start and then finish. We can put that, but the real activity is basically B, E, and J. Okay, and then how about the what we call free float? Okay, this is very interesting. Free float. Now free float get a bit complicated because of the what we call the relationship. Okay, now which one is our focus? Okay, maybe we focus on this thing first. Okay, simple one. Okay, between D and G, D and G, the early start of G is basically 10. The early finish of D is basically 10. So D doesn't have any free float, 0. Okay. Whereas, how about between A and G? Remember, A and G is do connect, but then A also connect from F. Okay, A also connect from F. Okay, now let's zoom in into A. What would happen to A? Okay, it looks like from A to G, if we deduct this thing, 10 minus 3, as if A do have free float of 3 days. Okay, as if, huh? But then A also connect from A to F. So A to F, look at this figure, 6. 6, but then because of -1, what happens is that when you want to deduct, to calculate free float, you need to consider something like this. 6, okay, then everything is basically, you deduct, this is what we call early start. You deduct with the early finish of the following activity, but then there is -1 there, 1. So 6 minus -1 equivalent to 7. Then only you can deduct with 7. So 7 minus 7 equivalent to 0. So meaning to say, if you want to take free float, not only you take the differences between this value, but you must consider also the lag or lead being mentioned here. Then only you get the right values. Otherwise, you might get things wrong. Okay, you need to consider. It is not that straightforward anyway. Okay, now let's go into how about G and J and E, for instance. Okay, let's zoom into E first. Okay, E and K, very straightforward. 14 minus 14, you already know that E basically free float is 0. So 0 is the ultimate free float. Even though, let's take a look at from E to J. It looks like as if it does have a free float, but you see this 16, 16 you have to deduct with 2. 16 deduct with 2 is already 14. 14 minus 14 also similar to 0. Okay, and now we zoom into G and J. G and J, which is quite special because from what we have learned so far, free float, we can identify easily between this value and this value. As simple as that, because of finish to start relationship. But for G and J, the relationship is not finished to start. How exactly are you going to compare? For instance, if you compare, okay, if you compare between this value, 16 and 18, 16 minus 18, that will be -2. Well, how how are you going to conclude? That is not the situation. If the relationship is different from finish to start, you must always consider the relationship type. Okay, the value that you need to consider is basically this value, and this value. But then the way you consider is 28. You have to minus with 3. That will be 25. 25, then you minus with 8. Then you get 7. That is the right free float. Okay, that is the situation. Okay, similarly with this H and I, because H and I is not finish to start relationship. But look at the relationship. So this is the figure that you need to consider. How do you calculate that? Actually, 20 minus 2. Minus 2, which is basically 22. Then only you minus with this one, 22. It end up to be 0. So this is 0. The rest are straightforward. Only those kind of situation, okay, where a little bit complicated, but you can still calculate using the same concept as I mentioned. Okay. All right, then that will be our demonstration on PDM diagram. Okay. Do you have any question before we go into the last 3 slides? Okay. Last 3 slides will be some example from the previous exam question. Okay. Now, this is the checking that I did with the Microsoft project. It looks like those are the value that we get from calculation and then from manual calculation. Okay, this is an example. Normally in the final exam, we would basically ask fundamental, the theoretical question like this, and then plus the full calculation. Full calculation meaning to say you need to develop something like this. But for the fundamental, we can ask a simple question like this. Okay, now let's say we do have two relationships, X. Okay, let me get another. X and Y. When in the bar chart it is being drawn like this, remember the bar chart indicate time scale from the first day until the end of the day. So first day, second day, third day, fourth day, whatever day. Okay, if the activity is being shown in this way, what can you say about this activity? Let's go into first statement. Start with positive lag. Start to start, meaning to say if you connect the arrow here, this is like start to start, isn't it? With positive lag. Is it possible? Is it? Yeah, it is possible because we already shift the starting of the following activity by whatever lag. So this is accurate statement. So you already know, okay, one should be correct. So from the answer here, there is no possibility B. Oh, the rest you need to evaluate because there is also one. Okay, never mind. Go into the second statement. So normally this kind of question would be much easier. People thought it is very difficult because you do the elimination process. Okay, number 2, finish with positive lag. Okay, if it is finish to finish, then the connection would be something like this. Finish to finish with positive lag. Is it possible or not?
Possible.
Yeah, possible.
Possible sebab jawapan pun dua semua ada tu.
Okay, you are right. Possible, tak payah pening-pening. Okay, now we go into 3. 3. Okay, now 3. Finish the start with positive lag. Okay, something like this. Finish FS positive something. Is it possible?
Tak.
Tak possible kan, sebab activity Y ni dia in advance, bukannya dia delay the starting of Y ni. So by right it should be negative is the correct one. So basically, is 3 is out of the apa tu yang negatif tu dah correct lah. Jadi kita tahulah dia punya answer 1, 2, 5 C. That would be the right answer. Yang ini pun tak possible. Okay. Alright, next. This one is very interesting question. Okay, this question give a few value. 10, this is early start value is given, but early finish is not given. Early finish is not given. Early finish, early here should be early start. Early start is not given. Early finish is not given. So early start, early finish. This one is equivalent to early start. Early finish is not there. Okay, what would be the question? Okay, the question is that calculate early finish for activity L, free float for activity L. We focus on L. Which is L? Okay, this is L. We wanted to know this value. What would be the potential value for L? Okay, so how do we solve the problem? Well, we can do the calculation based on backward pass. So 9 plus 8 equivalent to 17. If you put 17 here, okay, that would be one possibility, whereas the answer 17 is also there. Okay, but is that the correct way, the correct answer? Well, let's start from J. J, 10 plus 15 equivalent to 25. So if it is 25 that goes here, this will be 25. Then 25 minus 7, that would be equivalent to 18 instead of 17. So you see, which one is the correct one? Is it early start 17 or 18? Which one is the correct one?
17.
Huh? Berapa? 17 or 18?
18.
17.
Okay. Well, both answers are there. So in order to accommodate all the people, some of you saying 17 and some of you might say 18. Also, we also accommodate answer, but the correct answer would be 18. Why? Because of the bigger value. The bigger value would be 18 is coming from J. This is the situation. If you are not careful, you might thought it is 17. But then, you see, it's coming from back there. Okay, next would be total float. Is it total float or free float? Or free float? Free float for L, here L. Okay, remember L, in order to calculate free float, we just have to compare this value and this value, or even this value. If you compare between L and then N already have early start as 30, so 30 minus 25. If you use if correctly, yeah, that should be the correct answer. 30 minus 25 equivalent to 5. Well, let's take a look at the answer. So 5 is there, okay? But because L do have connection with M, so M, the early start of M would be equivalent to 25 as well, because it is finished to start. When you take into account the free float between L and M, the difference between this value, 25 minus 25, meaning to say it is equivalent to 0. So I already mentioned to you, when you are in this situation, there are two free float because there are two successor activity. We must take the lowest value because it is not possible for us to extend L by 5 days, because if we do that, we are going to affect the starting of M. So the right answer would be 0. So this is the answer. Okay, this kind of question is just to test your understanding about the concept. Once you understand the concept, you should be able to answer anyway, except that you get confused. Okay, so the rest, if you look at this, what we call this example, you notice that between I and J, there are two activity, SS plus 2 FF. If, for instance, in this situation, manually, yes, you can basically calculate, and you are going to choose the bigger value to enter into this box. But if you are experiencing this kind of question, even J and K, you see, if you try to input into Microsoft Project, then you will have difficulties. Microsoft Project do not accept redundant relationship. Redundant relationship meaning to say, you have this start to start at the beginning, and then FF, what is this thing? Which one do you really like to use in another word? So please decide as if something like that. So Microsoft Project only decide on dominant. For academic purposes, yeah, you can do that. But in reality, we are not going to use both type of relationship in this kind of situation. By right, we should choose at the beginning either to this one should be dominant or the other way around. Okay, so please remember that Microsoft Project only accept only in this situation between H and I, between J and K, because there is no need to put the start and finish because they well I would say basically among two only one will secretly will be used. This is another example of the final exam question for PDM diagram. Remember, in this diagram we do have lead, we do have lag with start to start, then different type of relationship, and at the end of the day, we wanted to know what is the project completion date, and then we also wanted to know what we call critical path, and then we might ask a total float for one or two activity or free float in a specific activity, and then we can also ask the impact of delay. Let's say activity F experiencing delay 2 days. We wanted to know what can impact with regard to project completion date, or even with respect to the subsequent activities. If you understand the concept of total float and free float, then basically you can get the answer very quickly. You don't have to redo the whole drawing. You can just basically zoom into F and then see, okay, if we add 2 days more, what would happen to I in terms of do F have any extra what we call free float? If the free float is basically 3 days, we only extend 2 days, it is still okay. It's not going to affect anything. So there is no changes to perhaps project. That is kind of a question that you might expect. All right, then with that, basically that will be the end of our class today. Okay, any question you need to ask? Let me share. I already shared with you one in the WhatsApp, one simple what we call Google form in order to understand who you are, because we didn't have chance to go through everybody. That's okay, just for information. And then let's go into attendance before you go. You can ask question if you have one. Okay, wait is the thing. Okay, so please scan yours using UTM Smart. Okay, our next class would be the next 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to release one quiz. The quiz would be some of the short answer that comprise of everything that we learn in the first 2 days. Okay, so perhaps that quiz we can basically replace one of the tests. We don't need to do many tests, so we can just basically substitute with that one. And then when we learn in the next 2 weeks, then perhaps in the third meeting or our last meeting, then we can have another so-called test or quiz, whatever, in order to evaluate the second class. I will also give you assignment, okay, yet to be designed. What kind of assignment? Later on, I will share in WhatsApp or even in e-learning. All right, then, if you have no question, that's it from me. Thank you for coming to class. And if you do have any question, you can always WhatsApp me. Okay. All right. See you again. Assalamualaikum and
Thank
have
you,
a good
sir.
day. Okay.
Thank you,
Welcome.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.